hit the bell, hit the fucking like button.
Yeah, like
Or
and
maybe it's over there.
subscribe, because that's what you're supposed to do on YouTube.
Everybody's saying fuck this show. Now
the
they did what
thing.
everybody.
Do the thing.
They're doing that shit that everybody else does and says to like and subscribe. Fuck these guys. And we thought they were cool for a second. We lost that.
Yeah, that's a dozen people that are going to be very upset. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Raising Spirits with your hosts, Will. That's me.
I'm Nate.
He sure is. No one else could be. We're here to talk to you about, whatever we're thinking about. Leadership, business, the hospitality industry, culture, all things, of interest to our audience, which is you, the viewers at home. First of all, what are we sipping on, Nate?
Well, William, I thought you'd never ask. I got a special bottle here, Maker's 46, finished in the French oak casks. This one in the 101 is a bomb. So I hope everybody can go grab a bottle, grab a glass, and get with the program.
Or drink it straight from the bottle if you don't really care.
I didn't know I could do that.
Here's to you.
Yeah, I'm grabbing one for the Super Bowl this weekend.
I was going to say, it'd be a good time to pour one up. What do you got to say about it? Despite your lackluster showing in fantasy this year, you are our football guru. So what are you seeing, man?
Yeah, well, I like I want the Patriots to win. Believe it or not, they've had enough hate over the.
It's easy to say without the people that have won all those times, involved anymore.
Right, different squad, different coach. I like Vrabel. I was happy to see him cling on to somebody after the Titans. Also, I think Sam Bradford. Sam Darnold. Sam Bradford. I'm thinking of the Vikings. Because they squandered their opportunity with Sam Darnold, and they all used to have Sam Bradford. He's another one they spent a pretty penny on, but they didn't keep Darnold, and then they let him go to Seahawks, and now the Seahawks are in the Super Bowl. So they lost their I think their GM last week, so rightfully so. But they are an NFC North opponent of the Packers, so fuck them.
Because fuck them, that's why.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see Bad Bunny. I'm looking forward to some halftime show there. Unless you want to tune into the alternative, which has Kid Rock, which would have never thought growing up with Kid Rock as a kid that would be a divisive issue. Is liking Kid Rock. I would play some Ba Ba Ba. That was my jam back in the day. But I bet you wouldn't have bet on that, which is something that I took notice of during the Grammys. Do you watch the Grammys?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. But I read the news. And something that came up, Trevor Noah, who was hosting, brought up Polymarket. And I was wondering, I know you're a sports betting aficionado, and this is very much along those lines. And I wanted to see what you knew about that, because that's kind of an emerging thing that I thought was pretty interesting.
I've actually heard the term, but I don't know jack about it. The closest thing I could think of is betting, on some of those props with the Super Bowl. And ironically, Ohio, I know they haven't allowed a lot of that over the years. What color's the Gatorade? The coin flip? How many times Taylor Swift's going to be on camera last year? Shit like that. And so that's what I kind of tie it to. But no, I don't know much about that Polymarket, but I've seen the term come across a handful of times.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought DeWine was going to get rid of prop bets. Did he not go through with that?
No, that's
I know
what
he
I'm
just
saying.
recently said his biggest regret was approving sports betting. Like, he's really wound up on it.
I think it's those things that somebody could know the answer to, which is why they haven't been available in Ohio since since they became legal, 2022, I think. So
yeah, it's been a couple of years.
That hasn't been one of the options for Ohio bettors, is those prop bets for the Super Bowl and such.
Yeah, reverse shout out to Emmanuel Class A for pulling that crap. Oh, but Polymarket, Kalshi, even some of your trading apps. I know Robinhood, on my Robinhood account, I've seen this come up. These prediction markets, it's almost like real life prop bets. Now, some are sports related, like I can buy an option or buy a trade on the Super Bowl on Robinhood now. But Polymarket, Kalshi, you're talking about crazy stuff. So what they were talking about on the Grammys was Trevor Noah said potato and said that somebody had some action on him saying potato. And by him saying it, they would win that bet. Now, that wasn't true. That was just a bit. But everybody got up in arms saying that was insider trading and that he was able to affect the outcome. And it kind of makes you think that there's so many outlandish things. It kind of makes me think about a few years ago. I don't remember what it was, if it was a football game or if it was a baseball game, but somebody had made a bet that there would be a streaker. And the guy that made the bet, or one of the guys that made the bet, went out and became a streaker in order to win the bet.
Well, yeah, you got to
Like
hedge
it's just a
your
whole
bail
different
money.
level. Yeah, right.
D-
You can break even at least. But just
yeah,
the amount of things, that they have, words that the president will say during the State of the Union. They've got, anything that's live that should be unpredictable that isn't sports is kind of in there. So like you said, how many times is Taylor Swift going to be on the screen? Maybe, your Bet 365 can't carry that, but one of these prediction markets can, because of how they're set up. It's just a very, very strange thing. And I just thought it was worth bringing up to see what you knew about it.
yeah. Well, sorry I couldn't bring more to the table, but I wonder what would have happened if he would have said potato, if it would have paid out.
Now, one of the things that I think we could bet on is, at least myself, but I think both of us, taking some trips. And that's what I want to talk about today. Looking at some travel trends. As you know, I'm a full-time traveler. Nate, I know you're a frequent traveler yourself. You're about to take a trip out west here coming up soon. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about what the BBC of all things is seeing as these big trends in travel coming up this year.
Yeah, let's hear it. We talked a couple weeks ago, I know, about a handful of things that were anticipated here in 2026, and I'm sure the theme probably isn't too stretched from what we were talking about there, but I I I know AI's in there. You don't have to tell me, and
Yeah, fuck AI. We're not talking about AI anymore.
so
We've talked way too much. AI
save
is
that one.
so embedded in everything that it goes without saying, I guess, almost.
So on to the next one. But yeah, well, I'm definitely eager to hear what they're anticipating this year's be. So lay it on me.
Yeah, there's a couple interesting ones. One is quietcations,
Mm.
unplugging, going completely screenless. I think that's a fantastic idea. I would love to do that if I could find a way to do it. Um, I don't know if you've ever. I know you're a connected guy. You're all about your business. And I know you're very similar to myself, where when you're on the road, you're keeping up with things. How would you feel? Would you be able to do? Would you be able to do it?
That's a question in itself right there. I think about the amount of times that you've said over the past 10 years that I need to disconnect. And over the past 2, 3, I've realized the importance probably of that. Whether that means, I mean, I once realized that you should exercise and eat vegetables, right? Too, but that doesn't mean I necessarily do
I
it.
read that once.
So I think my point behind that is hearing it is one thing, but then soaking it in and then actually acting on it is the other. And, dropping one phone a couple years ago was huge. Just that extra bit of anxiety in my pocket. I had those phantom rings that I was always reaching for in my
Mhm.
left side, my non-dominant pocket. So it wasn't my personal phone. And, I gained a little bit of peace of mind, and I understood. Obviously, having a family, having kids, peace and quiet is a good thing. That coming from me as an extrovert, I've always thrived off of the energy of others, having conversation and learning about people and sharing stories. But that disconnect time and that time to just, put the phones away. I know visually looking at screen time and such has led to a lot of studies on that and how it can impact you. But I think actually recently to my mother, who brought up this to my dad. Homer's got we have land up in the UP. And she mentioned, you guys should put some cabins on a handful of acres and rent it out to writers and other people because it's so common. And I didn't even think about what she was saying or where she probably read it, and she probably had the fast track to this article or this trend that's coming up this year.
Mhm.
Homer and I kind of looked at each other like, well, we probably have to sacrifice some ATV roads and stuff like that. But I the more I think about it, I could see, that and the importance of it, um, and how it's beneficial to re-energize, and take that break and literally take a break, not just take a break with your phone, take a break with your laptop, but and step out of the cubicle or the office, but really take a break. And there's nothing like then getting back to work on a full battery.
No, you're not kidding. I remember last year, I told you about it because I probably had Sabrina text you. We went to a music festival where I was going to, be in and out of the office in between shows. You do a little work here and there. And I forgot my phone. And it was, a good hour back to the campground where we were. We were in Maryland. Ocean's Calling, shout out to them. And it was a completely different experience not having a camera, not having to check an email or a text, not having any sort of a distraction from what's directly in front of you. Which, being at a music festival, that was kind of a different experience too, because now you're fully engrossed in what's going on there and enjoying that. But I can, in any situation, not having that tether to the real world, I guess, for lack of a better term, would be amazing. But yeah, I think it's a great trend, and I'm eager to participate in it. Yeah, say what's up to your mom for me. Another big trend they're seeing is
Yeah,
decision fatigue.
trust.
There's so many.
Trust is
We're
important.
so we're so connected to everything. We're always having to make a decision to answer an email, what have you, that a lot of people are turning to services or random experiences to remove the need to make decisions. One of the examples is people could buy a ticket to a random flight. So you pack a bag, you put your swim trunks in, you put a jacket in, and you take a random flight. You don't know where you're going until you get there.
I love that the spontaneous portion of that, where I'm usually very strategic and thinking about what I'm doing next. How is this going to go? I plan my whole vacation up front, sort of thing. But I like those off the grid kind of random, decisions that you make when you're on them. And so something like this, although maybe the other half wouldn't love, going somewhere unknown. I've seen some of those, the cruises that they have as well, where you literally sign up for a cruise. You don't know where you're stopping or where you're going.
Mhm.
But I think that's part of the thrill is the adventure of it. So sign me up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could do it. I need to have some sort of. I feel like I need to have some sort of control over, where you're eating, where you're drinking, where you're staying. The idea of just, what if you just end up in Estonia? What where you don't really, you end up in a place. And maybe Estonia is very nice. I don't want to put off our Estonian viewers, but not knowing anything about the destination, how much of my trip, my vacation, is going to be taken up with last minute research. So I almost feel like that's going to stress me out more than just making the decisions. So I'm kind of torn on that
I
one.
do find it unique that the reason a lot of these people are jumping into it is because they're so used to making those decisions and constantly being leaned on to make those decisions in their job and their roles and at home. And so uh, maybe target market for those types of
Mhm.
travels, I just find it interesting that what one person could think as is the reason they do plan their trip, another could think is it, one man's trash is another man's treasure.
True. And it does open up a whole other line of work really in the travel agent field of, really customized itineraries that, play to this, laying it all out, but not sharing it. So having all those details worked out, having reservations made and all that without sharing it with the customer. That would kind of be if I was a travel agent, that would be a really fun thing to do is send somebody on a trip that I've curated. So if I as a person, in that role enjoy the planning process and you do that for someone else. And now it's kind of like a surprise party. You're putting together this whole big trip. This, most people only get a couple trips a year at best. You're taking this piece of their world and just controlling it and trying to show them the best time possible. That could be a really interesting business idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, some of these trends, I think you almost got to try 'em and see how they work for you. Everything's not for everyone. And so jumping into one of these cruise ships or on one of these planes or going to one of these shows that you have no idea what it is or out to eat and all of a sudden it plops you in a restaurant that you never would have considered. I think that it in itself opens your door, opens the doors. And yeah, you're going to not like some of it, but at least you know what you don't like. So it's intriguing that that's on the list of trending, uh, travel topics.
Now, one thing I'm not surprised by, just based on how I live my life, is road trips. Road trips are coming back in a big way. Obviously, expense wise, much more reasonable, but people are realizing how much there is to see locally. Obviously this was a BBC article that we were reading. So thinking about just traveling around Great Britain, but obviously from a US perspective, I know in the 2 years that I've been doing this RV life experiment, the amount of different things I've been able to see, and the small amount of the US that I've been able to see, it has been very, very eye opening as to how much there really is to see here. We take it for granted, I think.
Yeah, road tripping in itself, that reminds me of, when I was a little bit younger. Everywhere we went, we drove, and it wasn't about a flight, and usually expense had something to do with it, but that was just the norm. Spring break, we're driving 18 hours, rotating between four of us to drive through, 4 or 5 states to head down to Florida, and that was just the norm. You didn't blink twice at it. Unfortunately, I caught the
Mhm.
4 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift a couple of times. That was horrible because I can't sleep early, and then in the trip just because of the excitement. And then when everybody else is zonked, my co-pilot, shout out to Reamer, who was supposed to be awake, and he's snoring louder than any of the other ones in the back. And so, I got stuck on the last leg of that, or second to last leg of that trip, which was the worst. But I've driven across state how many different times? Again, I don't think it has to do with age. It may be financial stability. And time is money, right? So that's the other thing. But if I thought about it at the time, what else could we see while on that trip? And I think that's the real
Mhm.
question, that so often is everybody looking to go out of the country when the majority of us haven't even seen what this country has to offer, first of all, and the amazing parks and places. And so I'm a fan of the travel. I'm a little jealous when you set to take off a couple years ago, because again, there's nothing like experiencing it and being out on the road, man. Interstate 80s, I've put a lot of miles on that highway, and man, I'd like to just keep bouncing around and seeing something that I haven't seen.
All the best experiences I've had in this is just taking a road and heading a direction without a plan. I know it kind of flies in the face of that last point we just made, but it's a little different when you're not hopping in a plane. You're just driving a direction and seeing where you get, and not putting the map on. Just see what's out there. Grab a bite locally. Find a place to grab a drink. Find a historical spot or a park or whatever it is. There's so much to see. It's unfathomable, really, the amount of different things that there are to see that they're actually worth seeing, you know?
But some of those special places and parks too, they're not located right near an airport, right? So you're not going to necessarily
Mhm.
see those when you go to some of these destinations that do have your ins and outs. So, I think back to when I went to Mount Rushmore for the first time. Drove through Sturgis, stopped at, I think it was Full Throttle, one of the biker bars that was famous, drank some brews there, and driving through South Dakota. Again, I've made many a trips across state one way or the other, or across the country one way or the other. And I think to a lot of these places, you couldn't just get off of a flight, because you'd still have to rent a car and then drive a few hours. So I'd almost rather just be behind that wheel, stop at a handful of places. I don't
Mhm.
know if you guys carry an atlas, but when I would drive, out west, when I was heading out to Tahoe and such, we'd look on those atlases. This is before the phones that had all the GPSs. There it is. And we'd Sharpie, maybe a destination or a city that we wanted to spend the night in, and we would just head there. And it was, hey, I hope this road is that right road that leads us to that little dot that looks like it has a decent amount of population. But yeah, I think that someday, again, just like we talk about this road tripping, and we talk about the days where we used to sit outside and play in the streets and wait for the car to honk, so we stopped the baseball game and the kickball game. It's just one of those things that you kind of get away from over the past few decades, whether it's through technology or just convenience.
I remember one of my favorite things about, and this is a deep pull here, watching Diamondbacks baseball back in the day. Mark Grace was the color commentator, and anytime there's a stop and play, he would yell "car," and it would just take you right back to when you would be in the street doing whatever. I'm sure hockey games up where you were, but baseball games, football, whatever you're doing, everybody's playing in the street. And that was the only thing that would stop you. It
Yeah.
wasn't like today. Nobody's playing outside today. I've been reading recently on a lot of the alternative sports. Pickleball is obviously the big example right now because it's super hot. Golf had its moment when Top Golf came around, but so many of our generation and maybe generation right before us, maybe some Gen Xers, reminiscing about making up games. The games that you would just make up on the playground that I remember playing, but I couldn't tell you what the rules were anymore. It was just kind of a secret sauce on the playground, and that actually leads into one of the points this article made is super personalized trips. There was a listing of all these alternative sports, I guess I don't know what to call them, that people are making travel for now. There's pickleball circuits or resorts that specialize in pickleball, where you go out there with your team and you play against other people that are also visiting, and that's one of the big takeaways of this. There's also some volleyball plays out. Well, up in Reno, obviously bowling was a huge thing with that huge complex back in the day. So that's one of the things they're talking about is finding what your hobby is and then building your travel around that.
That makes sense. I've partook in a golf kind of road trip at one point in time, and I could see, I got a handful of buddies who still play frisbee golf, and that they travel to
Frolf.
destinations to play these courses. And again, I could see just traveling, multiple times in a day to play different courses and seeing how many you could hit up. I think that'd be, I mean, again, you're already playing a sport or a hobby that you love, and then why not do it in different areas that you haven't experienced before? So, I grew up as I mentioned, in Green Bay. We grew up learning pickleball in gym, right? We'd have rotations of different sports every week, or and we had to learn them. I mean,
I didn't realize
archery,
pickleball was that old.
badminton. Pickleball was one of the classes or week long classes where you
No
learn it,
shit.
you learn to score it, play it, and then you have a tournament at the end on Friday, right? That's the fun part. So bowling's in there. Like I said, we did archery. We had all these different sports, but I was amazed because there was like a break in my life of probably like 30 plus years to where I never heard the term pickleball, maybe 25 years. And then all of a sudden, boom, we're talking about clubs and courts and pickleball night. And I'm thinking, it kind of reminded me of racquetball when I was younger. My pops used to play that. And I remember him either going to the Y or going to different rec centers to play that. So here we are, 2026.
I had no idea it was that old. That's crazy.
Maybe it's cyclical.
I know I've taken some trips, obviously for me, a little less active, obviously, but food trips, I've taken some of those, which makes sense. That kind of plays along with travel, but they got some crazy stuff going on. Like I was reading there's menopause retreats where women
Hmm.
who are going through that go to these resorts or spas or what have you. And the entire programming is specifically for, what ails them. There's divorce
Postpartum.
retreats.
Yeah.
There's premarital retreats where they arrive together and then they separate and the ladies do the one thing and the guys do another thing. There's retreats that are based around obviously a lot of religious retreats. Just all these different niches that you know being adjacent to the travel industry as we were to a degree. I had no idea all this was going on.
Yeah, there's all these niches or niche or whatever Lucas would call it that, again, there's a market for it. And, you think to couples maybe expecting their first kid. They got retreats for that. They got, all I think back is to the shout out to Vince Vaughn, the couples retreat, I think it was. And Big Sexy there going on his his day trip. But
Kevin
all I could
Nash.
if that's who it was, I don't know. But again, these themed, travels, that's exciting. That's part of the excitement right there. Again, you're going for a similar reason. You're gonna bond. You have that connection with others too, and then you can get something out of it when it's geared toward what's specific to that point in time in your life.
Something a little bit niche, something I would not have thought I would be interested in until recently. One of the trends they're seeing, and maybe it ties back into that affordability factor, is off the beaten path, more rural travel, camping, car camping, van life, things like that, RVing to a degree, but being a little bit less about flying into Vegas, flying into Miami, staying at a hotel, eating at the five-star restaurant, all those things, but a little bit more of a authentic experience, I guess, to a degree, in a very roughing it kind of way.
I love the wilderness survival aspect too. Today's full of gems, man. I like them. I'm smashing all these. I
Smash them.
again, growing up in the north, going to camp all the time, thinking about backpacking. I'll make sure Ashley throws up a picture. My uncle and I, we were preparing for. It's called Isle Royal National Park, and it's off of the Upper Peninsula up there.
It's on my list.
Go out of Copper Harbor, and you put your canoe on the ferry, and you go out to Isle Royal, and then there's different levels of it, but we would rough it for the week, and we basically take our canoes from the point in which they drop us off, and we'd head to Caribou Island, and we'd stay there a couple nights. And again, we're fishing for our dinner. Shout out to Gramps. He'd pack have us pack our spam and tubes of jelly and tortillas and hard salami, the things that could last a week unrefrigerated in emergency in case we didn't catch fish. But the goal every night was to be eating what we caught during that day. And so I love the portage of paddling, right up there on Lake Superior. I think like 16 miles, you could see Canada and the cliffs up there. That's one of the things you just, whether it's time, whether it's other responsibilities that you have, you get away from some of that stuff. But again, it's good to see it kind of coming back around for others. And I'll know they'll deck some of these people out. And I think of like the City Slickers movie back in the day, where they'll deck these guys out with everything they need, and even give them a travel guide and as you mentioned, a car, or a Jeep, or a Bronco, packed with a tent on top, and all sorts of things to just go out there and
Hey.
fend for
Let's
themselves.
not talk trash about a Bronco with a tent on top.
No,
Thank you very much.
no. I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that. So that's just one of those things that again, if you haven't done it, it's exciting. And if you did it at one point in time in your life, it's fucking exciting. And, not knowing where your next meal's coming from, sitting there filleting a fish on a log that's slippery as hell while it's pouring down rain, bathing out in the lakes. To some people, they're probably shaking their head right now. Like, what the hell are you talking about? But that is exciting. And hiking with the damn canoe over your shoulders for the next 8 miles to get to the next lake, there's nothing like it. And so when I think of when you first mentioned that, that's what kind of nostalgic, but that's what it drew me back to.
I think it connects back to I never would have thought I would have liked camping. Like, I was not a camp. You've known me for long enough. I'm very much a hotel restaurant fella, and so is my wife. And going on this RV life experiment here, we decided to try it out, and had two mixed results. Our very first camping trip, we wanted to camp on the beach for Christmas. We went Christmas Eve. We watched our favorite Christmas movie, put up a little Christmas, not tree, but, a little Christmas decoration, camping on the beach in Texas, and all of a sudden the storm comes in, the winds are crazy. And apparently, word to the wise, or word from the wise, I'm not sure which way that's supposed to go. Word from the wise or word to the
We'll
wise.
Google it.
However, word from Will, if you're in South Padre Island, that is a border. That is a border for the U.S. that is patrolled at all hours by very large border patrol trucks with extraordinarily large bright lights. So camping in a tent on the beach, you will not get any sleep because there's trucks going by with these 10 million lumen lights every 5 minutes. So not a good idea. Learn from our mistakes. However, I do think that just this more rural camping in however, if you're sleeping on the ground or if you're sleeping in your RV, whichever, it ties into a little bit more of the evolution of man. There's a piece of our brains that still is turned on by subsistence living and fishing for or hunting for your own food or whatever. All those things, there's still a connection there to our history years back. And so I think that's where that comes from, because it didn't ever appeal to me until I did it. And then it just, you get it. Once you do it, you get it. Even if it's not something you think you would like, it kind of just clicks into place, and your brain says, yeah, this is how you're supposed to be living. This is what you're supposed to be doing all the time. And all this other stuff, all this email and bullshit is just made up to get in between you and what you're supposed to be doing, which is being out there in nature, fresh air, fresh water, fresh food, maybe. And everything you do has a purpose. You spend your day making a fire, catching food, preparing, a safe place to sleep, a warm place to sleep, making sure that everything is, safe and plentiful, all those things. It's just what we as human beings kind of were meant to do from whenever we stopped walking on all fours. The last time we went camping, Sabrina's tent broke. It would not go back together right. It's a hammock tent, and the covering of it, I think we somehow must have put it on backwards at some point, and it just snapped something. And so every time it would look perfectly fine until you get in it, and then the whole top would collapse. Every single time. It was hilarious, except when she kept waking me up to fix it. We were also surrounded by wild turkeys on that trip. That was in Utah. Hunted by wild turkeys, which is a descendant of the dinosaur. So in essence, this was Jurassic Park. There's your banter.
Yeah. When before I ever went to Isle Royale, I think I was like 8, something like that, 7 or 8. And my grandpa and uncle were like, I don't know if he can make it. We got to prepare him, telling our mom. So we're in up in Ishpeming, National Mine area, a few hours from Copper Harbor, top of Upper Michigan. And they wanted to prepare me and see if I could go hike with a backpack on and such. So they threw this bag of dog food, like a 50-pound bag, 75-pound bag of dog food. And again, at the time, I was knee-high to a duck. And threw that thing on, and my uncle's like, I'm taking him out. So pour one up for Uncle Christian, took me out on this trail and this hike, and he's like, yeah, we got this. There's a lot of iron ore mines up there. And he said, they're draining this lake, and for whatever reason, and it's the last time I could see this lake. We got to keep going until we find it. So we're hiking. Pretty soon it's starting to get dusk, and he's like, we're almost there, And all right, I'm just trying to make sure I can withstand this big ass bag of dog food. And here it's pitch black. And so we're starting to head home, and he's starting to kind of worry because he knows that my mom and his dad are probably pretty worried. And him and I only have like a 6-year age difference. And pretty soon he's got the backpack because I couldn't keep up with the pace that he wants to move. And so he's taking the backpack. We're running. It's black for probably over an hour. And all of a sudden he's like, I think this is a shortcut over here. We can hear four-wheelers, and so we're trying to, he's got these other paths he wants to take us back, and we're trying to get over these hills, follow power lines. Long story short, they called like the search and rescue for us because we were gone for like 8 hours. And what my uncle thought was a quick little visit or hike was not a quick little hike. And yeah, your screen was blurry, which is good because the flat top
was little square ass head.
The flat top was in back then, So
no, that was your head, man. That was just your hair following the natural curvature.
The cops and search and rescue on 4-wheelers, and finally my great grandpa, him and my mom were driving in this truck, and they found us on some side road. But yeah, never will we live that story down. And to this day, we don't admit to being lost because they found us on a main road. But we definitely tried taking a few different ways to get back faster because my uncle knew he was in deep shit with everyone. That was pre-Isle Royale. And then we roughed it.
Seems like the further north you get, the crazier people's stories get. What the fuck is this, Nate?
Well,
no, what the fuck was that?
I don't know. I was thinking, I was drinking, I was feeling the burn. There's a few things going on at the same time. Doing my little Steph Curry shimmy. I was visiting
Chef Curry with the pot, boy.
An establishment, and they have like a cafe, right? High volume of people that come through there, and they have a cafe, and the window looked like your normal concession stand window, maybe 10 feet wide by 4 feet high. Why there were two computers there, I don't even know, because they've clearly gone the route of self-checkout. And so across from that is an island that has 2 or 3 self-checkout machines. All the coolers are outside of that concession window, let's call it. And then to my left, when facing it, there's about 20 cubes where the chef puts let's call him a chef, puts the food that was ordered in that cube, and then the person on the other side opens it up with their order number that was on their ticket. And so it looks like a pretty efficient setup. Although all 20 cubes were empty, and I sat there and I counted seven employees, if you will, behind this counter that clearly the sole purpose of it was for efficiency and to reduce what one would think would be, their FTE count. And for some reason they couldn't figure that out. Kind of reminded me of a restaurant that we once worked around that always seemed like there were more team members than customers. And it still wasn't efficient.
Many cooks in the kitchen. Killed me every time. The best kitchen I ever worked in was the small. I shouldn't say worked in, but worked with. Was the smallest kitchen. It was so efficient. And here's a word to or from the wise. I still haven't figured that one out. For anybody who's
definitely
designing,
not from.
Design it for use, not for looks. Just because it's an open kitchen doesn't mean it's got to be expansive and huge. You're doing yourself a disservice. You don't want somebody who's tied to the fryer because it's 20 yards away. Irritates me every time I go in and the open kitchen either looks barren and there's one poor motherfucker running back and forth, or you got 8 guys there and nobody's producing anything.
That's what grinds your gears.
Story from just the other day. Went to a bar. We're here for Mardi Gras. And there was a parade. We went to a bar before the parade. They had a special parade menu because they were going to be so busy they weren't going to be able to make regular drinks. And then there's 4 of these motherfuckers sitting back there pouring pre-made drinks and then talking amongst themselves. I could have had an old fashioned, but no, they're pre-pouring punch and just draft beers. There's people walking up left and right trying to order a regular drink off the regular menu that they had plenty of time to make. They said no, these people walked away. That's money pouring out the door. So
just designate one of the bartenders
guys
for the premium drink. Just do something. Just do something.
Yeah.
It's humorous how
adjust on the fly. Don't assume it's going to be so busy you can't keep up. Push people to keep up. Staff it to keep up. Like I said, 4 bartenders for an 8-seat bar in a walk-up window.
Have a plan.
You can't make a drink.
When you get buried, then switch to the pre-poured stuff. But until then, maximize that drink revenue. I don't know. Again, it just baffles me. We've talked about a handful of these. What the fuck is this? And from self checkouts to this, that it's supposed to do one thing and it's almost doing the exact opposite. And it's just mind boggling that someone hasn't just sat there and watched it operate to realize that, what the fuck are we doing?
That's the thing. It is about having a plan. It's about having the ability and the wherewithal from a management standpoint to adjust. You can't just walk into a situation and assume what it's going to be. Start with status quo. Start with offering exactly what you're supposed to offer. And then if you get to a point where you can't, step down and step down and step down if you have to. Think about all the times that we had crazy lines at events that we had managed and people tried to change offerings. We think about food and beverage outlets that we've been associated with and staffing situations that were, maybe not controllable at the time, but you make a determination when you know what you have, not beforehand. And you start, those are the hidden dissatisfiers. Who knows what regular customers walk in and are not offered or can't get, the service that they expect or the product that they expect that now have not become regulars anymore, and think about all the extended revenue, how far out you can extrapolate that you've lost by making bad decisions like that.
Don't limit yourself.
Sorry, I have a dog that's visiting me here. So there she is. That's it. There you go. All right, get the fuck out of here. That's plenty. There's so many things that get talked about. I was just looking at executive dysfunction or burnout or, all the things that are related to, the quote unquote modern world that afflict people, that cause, stress in people's lives. And people talk about how it affects their relationships negatively and their business negatively. And all of that, one of the things that is tied to the resolution of all of that is time in nature. So whether it's, the camping that we talked about, the road tripping we talked about, any of those things, or just taking a fucking walk, or just whenever I have the opportunity, I'll take a meeting, if we're going to be on a call, or what have you, I'll take it from outside. You get some vitamin D from the sun, get some fresh air, the breeze on your face, what have you, wherever you can. I know in our past lives, there's times we took meetings from outside or moved things as best you could to an environment that was a little more conducive to thought rather than order. It's a little
Often
bit
the
harder
bar,
to do sometimes, but yeah, that helps. On the
or
patio of the
or
bar,
it
though,
doesn't help
you
at the
know,
same time.
it depends on who you talk to. But I do think, getting back to nature, getting time in the outdoors is vital. And I think that's something I didn't appreciate for a very long time. And my lifestyle now has afforded me the opportunity to understand that and appreciate it much more.
It's interesting because we're not city slickers, but at the same time, your natural life and habits and such just take you away from it. So it's just not something you do on a regular basis. You almost have to force yourself to go out there, and the woods is 100 steps that way, but you got to force yourself to get out and get dirty, get a tick, get a bug bite. And I think back to when we had COVID, and we were still trying to connect with our team while they were, furloughed or laid off at the time. And so we were trying to make sure their mental was right and keeping in touch with them. And I remember Jackpot, cruising through the park, and he was one that was having one of the roughest times, walking on a path, sitting on a park bench. And I mean, it's nothing but good for you. And I love taking meetings throughout the sunset awning. Shout out to More Shade for Less. Throw that puppy out, throw my tablet, kick my feet up, grab a Modelo, and just sit out there and take a meeting, take a call, and work from the patio and the deck. And it just gives you a little bit of energy, especially at that 4, 3 o'clock hour where things start to drag a little bit. That's it just lifts you up a little bit being outside. I'm not in love with the vitamin D like you are, but I would say that, it's proven to be beneficial to some.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure Nate loves the D. But I do agree that in lieu of a Red Bull or what have you, those 3 o'clock blues that everybody talks about, getting a little fresh air, getting a little sunshine could probably solve a lot of that problem. I think part of our issue was working for so long in a casino, which is mainly windowless. Mainly the idea is to have no concept of what time it is outside. Now our last property did have some big front windows, so you were able to kind of identify what was going on. But uh, the disassociation, and probably by design for most businesses to try and make sure that you're just focused on the work at the time. I think we're missing something by not getting that in everyday life. I know we talked about it as far as trips and things like that, but there's little things every day that we can do to get a little bit of that life back, a little bit of that. I don't even know what to call it, that Neanderthal piece of our brain that still exists to recharge you.
Make yourself a plan. Do something that isn't what you planned on doing this year. Go out of your way to do it. Get it in the books, make it happen, and you'll thank us later.
And then from a hospitality standpoint, I want to give a shout out real quick to Finn McCool's in New Orleans this last week. And I guess this is a paperclip. It just dawned on me to give one. Went to the crew of Arsenal, Arsenal being the Premier League football team from England there. We've been following them since we were able to go to a game on our honeymoon when we were in London. There is apparently, amongst all the other Mardi Gras crews, there's a group of enthusiasts that come to Mardi Gras every year. They're up to over 200 now that come to Mardi Gras. or to Carnival. I guess it's Mardi Gras is just the day. Carnival's the season. But they come to New Orleans to celebrate their love of Arsenal, the team. And so we saw that, and us being Arsenal fans, we went to the game, and there was easily over 100 people in this bar that was probably made to fit 60. And everybody, not only the bartenders, shout out to the bartenders, they were, right on the spot. The hearing, the fact that these bartenders could hear your order over everybody talking, the game is blaring. Shout out to their ears, first of all. But the organization, the fact that they had everything, you have all these people, were overwhelming numbers in this bar, and you've got 3 bartenders working, and nobody is in a rush because they have order. They have a process. Everything is being done in a very expedient time. I never waited for a drink for an outrageous amount of time. Everything is just processed well. And shout out to the patrons as well, because I think when you're all there for the same reason, if you go to a club and everybody's there just with their own groups, everybody's competing for hey, over here, and you're flashing your credit card or whatever to get the attention of the bartender. When you're there in a group setting where everybody's kind of there for the same reason, that people are just more, for whatever reason, more polite with each other. So there's a lot of, excuse me, and a lot of making room for people, and a lot of just community there. So shout out to the crew of Arsenal, and Gunnar Gra is what it's called. I know that's got a weird perception in English, American English, but the Arsenal fans are called Gunners, which is then changed to Gooners in the English afflection. So shout out to them and Finn McCool's in
I'm
New
writing
Orleans.
that down. That's good shit.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll talk to you next time. Raising Spirits is a new standard podcast hosted by Will Hockney and Nate Geeson and produced by Ashley Kuba. Theme music by Marcus McLaughlin. Musical director, Angel Flowers. Raise our spirits by following us on our socials at Raising Spirits Podcast or visiting newstandardconsulting.com/Raising Spirits. We'll see you next time.